use clips of it in some of the marketing that we do. We like to see faces. Looks like I can see just about everybody's face on. Thank you very much. We use the chat, as I was saying. Tell us who you are. Tell the other folks who you are. Feel free to start, questions or add comments in the chat as the conversation goes on. I think it's good dialogue. The agenda for today, I do my typical introduction. Maribel's going to walk through the topic, and then we will use your responses to our registration form to drive some discussion. You are part of CI Mastermind Live here. We are a small group community, and I would encourage, so Maribel's been a regular, thank you, Maribel, and is now one of our speakers. I would encourage those of you that might want to speak on one of these, let me know a topic. Rob is also a regular, Rob Snyder, and he's going to be speaking next week, or next month. So happy to take ideas from you on topics and add them to our schedule as I see us as a community. We always focus on some real-time problems. So, as Maribel talks about her topic today, I would encourage you to think about it in terms of the work that you're doing and share a bit about how you might apply it or ask questions about how you might apply it. Because ideally, I'd like you guys to get something you can take back and use at your companies. And I will facilitate the discussion in a rotational format. Usually we get to 2 or 3 questions. I always ask that you respect each other on the call, that you're careful about the information you share about your company, and that you engage and help each other from your experience. These calls are typically, in fact, when I follow up with folks, sometimes they're frankly quite impressed by you all and the experience that you bring. The more junior folks anyways, and that they can learn a lot from all of us. So that's the idea here. Just a couple notes from my side. The last month's topic, we decided to turn it into a LinkedIn Live. And if you don't know, LinkedIn Live is like a streaming live session. It's a little bit more of a webinar format. Dan Wallace has agreed to come back and speak on this topic again, deliberate meetings. I believe it drove a lot of discussion last time. We'll be using some of the content from that session for this LinkedIn Live event. And we'll also cover some of the questions we didn't get to last month as well. So I'm pretty excited about this. We have about 70 people signed up so far, so that's pretty big. And I would encourage you, if you can attend. If you can't, invite a friend or send it to a friend. Just say, hey, you should attend this. It's just a way that we're trying to get a little bit more messaging out and, again, deliver a bit more value to our community. Also, I'm looking around the room here. I don't know. Probably none of you are in the Chicago area. But if you know anyone in the Chicago area, I'm a member of Valley Industrial Association. It's a great local association of manufacturers. I am running their quality and ops roundtable. We just kicked it off about 2 months ago, and we've decided to make it a monthly thing. And so that's a way to get more of this. And again, like everything I do, it's going to be very problem-solving driven and accountability focused. And then I'm also running a Kaizen leadership program through the VIA. So again, if you're in the Chicago area or know someone in the Chicago area, this will be a good way to get some training and get some projects completed, because we actually complete projects in that leadership development session. Next month is Racy stalling your team. Try these 5 verbs. I love Racy, Rob Snyder, and I don't know what problem you would have with Racy. But I'm excited. I'm excited to hear what you have to say and maybe try to challenge you a little bit. Although I have to say that I do like the 5-verb concept as you explained it to me. So I'm very excited about this topic. We'll promote it and hope to see you all back for that next month. Okay, that's enough from me. Maribel, I'm going to hand it over to you. If you could share your slides, share a little bit about yourself, because people may not know a lot about you. And get into your topic, please.
All right. So let me, hold on, let me see if I can figure this out. I don't use Teams as much.
You can see your slides.
Okay, you can?
Yes.
Perfect. All right. Okay, so just a little bit about me. I am actually recently retired. I know I look young, and kind of doing something different. I'm actually a little bit moving in a slightly different direction than corporate, but I did 20 years at Snap-on, and the last 13 years, I worked for two companies at Snap-on Tools, but in their software division for Snap-on Diagnostics and Mitchell 1. So this is the repair information, the diagnostic information for your cars. So more on the software side. So 13 years running their CI program for them. The reason I say that is I'm not manufacturing. So I did do my black belt like everyone else and know all the techniques, but I had to adapt them into a service environment, into an office environment. I worked under the president of both companies, and I was allowed to really work with everyone from facilities to the C-suite. Over those 13 years, we did over 10,000 projects. Improvement projects, from personal projects, you know, individual. We had requirements that everybody had to do at least participate in one team project and one personal CI project, which is where the over 10,000. Lots of training, lots of facilitation. So this presentation is really a lot of the ahas and the gotchas that happen in a office environment or in kind of a human environment. It's so much easier when you're dealing with machines. You can see that a machine is broken, not working, needs to be optimized, needs maintenance, needs all of that. But what happens when it's the person, when it's a team, when it's people and feelings? How do you optimize a team and the flow and all of that, and how they're interacting with technology? So this is kind of a glimpse into that. So I always remember this from biology, my biology class. It always stuck with me, you know, form determines function, form shapes function. So in biology, the shape of something is determined what it does. And what I realized that in business, it's pretty much the same. If you don't like how things are working, it was probably designed that way, not on purpose. Somewhere in the process, workarounds happened, little pieces that, you know, people kind of threw in. It was a great process at the beginning, and now it looks like an octopus with tons of different legs and everything. But I can tell you that your successes in your processes and your failures are probably designed intentionally or unintentionally that way. So some of the things that I've seen, communication breakdowns is the most common. So I just recently worked with a company, and it drove me crazy. The VP, they were trying to do policy deployment and bringing down the strategic objectives. And it just got crazy how this particular VP interpreted the corporate objective. He was on his fourth PowerPoint, and each one had a slight variation of what he thought was objectives, and some of them were action items. So he blended action items with objectives with KPI. It was this, I couldn't even figure out what he was trying to do. And I'm like, if I couldn't figure out, I can't imagine how the rest of the team could understand what they should be working on. Sometimes people change policies, but that policy change, you know, finance says, you know, oh, we're now doing credit checks on blah, 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 but that doesn't get communicated to everyone. Well, half the people know, half the people go with the old process, some people go with the new one. Reorgs are the toughest for me that I saw. Anytime you have a reorg, or God forbid, and I know we're seeing this a lot, you have a layoff or whatever, and now suddenly you absorb other people's jobs. In that absorption, now somebody, the reorg announcement, or sometimes even a promotion, by the way, so-and-so is now doing this, and everyone goes, yay, that's so great, so-and-so is now doing that. But then there's no real follow-up as to who's doing the position before. Are there any gaps? Did that get split up? Now who's in charge of what? Because now what's going to happen is, now I don't know who I should be emailing. Which brings me to the next one, too many communication channels. So next thing you know, I am now what I see with technology, and technology is great, but it's a little too feature rich. So if you're using Salesforce or a CRM system, HubSpot, Microsoft Dynamics, ERPs, guess what? They all have embedded chat. They all have embedded calendars sometimes and all of this stuff. So now you have everybody using their preferred communication method. Oh, I prefer email, text. I do Slack. Well, I do Zoom. I do Teams. I do blah, blah, blah. Well, now what happens is you think you're communicating, and you did, but that information got kind of spread out. Context is often missing because now I don't understand what you were trying to tell me. The person who is trying now has to use this information is now trying to stitch everything together from Slack and the ERP and all of these things just to try to figure out what am I supposed to be doing or telling the customer or giving to the next team, all of that. We're now going into this whole thing about returning to office and more, and not to say that that's a bad thing. Here's the piece that no one talks about. When we talk in person, when we have a phone call, a lot of these exchanges go undocumented. What does this mean? That if I forget to do something and you remind me a week later, hey, where are we with blah, blah, blah? Did you really, did I agree to that? Now there's no backup to say that I did what the intent was or anything. Most people don't go back and say, I'll send you an email or something to follow up on this conversation or whatever. So with that, there's no reminders, no audit trail, no shared visibility. So we have a lot of service errors, and most of them are due to unclear handoffs. Why? I just talked about it. Goofy technology pieces, the data gets broken up into a million places, different medias, by the way, hidden steps and assumptions, unseen handoffs. So you don't know that so-and-so hands this off to this piece or to this person because that's not part of the documented process. It's just something I know I do because it's faster, better, or whatever. So unmapped steps. And that hidden friction now quietly starts to drain time, budgets, morale, things go slower, lots of the blame game. And the other piece that to me creates a lot of invisibility that if you know, you know, but most people don't know, is how many people have to rely on relationships over standard processes to get things done. And you don't know that until someone goes on vacation, someone gets terminated, somebody quits or whatever, and now suddenly you realize this person was the missing link to all of these processes that you didn't think this person was a part of. And now, surprise, they were. Why? Because people got into the habit of saying, oh, just call so-and-so, they'll get it done for you. They're really good. They're very responsive, da-da-da. That's great, and that's great for teamwork and all of that good stuff, but it's not great for the company. Now you're having all these hidden steps, processes, knowledge. Don't even get me started with, one of the biggest things I've struggled was companies that always tried to circumvent corporate governance, and they would open up their own Slack or their own personal Dropbox things, and they would keep corporate things in there. And the problem is that if the company doesn't know this and it gets abandoned or somebody leaves, they probably got cut off from all corporate pieces. But if they still have access to these side Dropboxes, Box, and all of this stuff, they may still have access to intellectual property. I've had this situation happen. This is why I'm telling you. So the real world, we have handoffs as being a breaking point, change fatigue, constant, like this VP that had a million variations and interpretation of the strategic objectives. No, we're doing this, and next week, oh no, this came up, so now we're going to be doing this instead. And now everyone's trying to figure out, well, what am I supposed to be working on? Is it this or this? And who gives the final call on this? Gaps in administration workflows, lack of that shared visibility. I use this calendar, but that calendar isn't seen by the other teams. So they don't know that I'm having these meetings, that I'm doing all of this stuff, that I have access to certain data centers and information that would be helpful to others as well. And they're recreating the wheel because they don't even know that it's already exists and I could get access to it too if I just knew about it. If too many technology stacks sometimes leads to double data entry because it doesn't all seamlessly work together. So I type in the customer's information here and then I type it over here again so that from an ERP system to a CRM system because they're not connected properly. And now I have everything could be there, missing subscription information, typos, whatever. So now there's little breakdowns. Global factors, if you're a global company, diagnostics for me I was dealing with different time zones, languages, cultural norms. The time zones was an interesting one because we actually had to start figuring out in workflows, when did somebody end? When would somebody wake up and pick it up? And if there was a gap in that transition, then we had to put that back in to say, oh, well, this person won't even be awake when this process needs to be picked up. It can't be them. It has to be another team and another time zone that has to do it to keep it moving forward. And again, I mentioned people want more direct interaction. It's a great thing. Talking to people is amazing. But the piece that's always missing is how do you close that loop to make sure that the critical points that were discussed get documented somewhere for everybody to happen. Just because I bumped into you in the bathroom and said, hey, by the way, blah, 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 we have a quick discussion. It was amazing. We got some stuff done. But then nobody else knows that the decision that we made or anything else that comes in that. So we make a lot of assumptions. Everybody knows what to do next. Maybe, usually not. More technology is a better process. I see everybody throwing technology to stuff. Multitasking improves productivity, and that's where a lot of technology that people have everything open, the Slack, the email, and all of this. And the other one, we don't have time to fix this now, but apparently you have enough time to suffer through the 5 million workflows to go through it. So really, the biggest thing that I always tell people is audit, audit, audit. Do a technology audit. How many systems are you using? How are you communicating things? Where does your data live? Who has access to it? Does everybody understand where they can get access if they need it? Observe, understand people's roles. Shadow someone. How much is tribal knowledge? How much can be put in? Now, if you start to go down the path of robotics and things like that, that documents the processes in that process of automation. Sometimes that's a faster way to go than trying to write SOPs, all that. Use videos as opposed to having. Sometimes people say, I don't have time to write a 20-page document. That's true, but you have time to do a 5-minute video as you are doing the process so that it's documented somewhere if needed. Design better handoffs. Define the standard of done. Sometimes people continue to work on things because they don't think it's finished, or they don't think that their standard of done is either too high or too low. Does everybody agree that when we finish this is what we consider finished? Somebody might say, no, you still need 3 more steps. Somebody else might say, you added 3 more steps. You didn't need to do that much. Build checkpoints, feedback loops into every process. How do you know things have gone awry? How do you know things got missed? How do you know things got done wrong? So that if you do have all of this stuff, where is the little bings that tell you, hey, something it's kind of going off the rails? Establishing that role clarity. If somebody doesn't own the process from start to finish, that you can say so-and-so owns this, you're always going to run into problems. Anytime there's black holes, you're going to run into problems. What do people want? Clear prioritization. They just want to know, what do I need to do? Hand-off accountability. Again, if you know that someone goes on vacation and that's going to be a risk to things, you need to start cleaning that up, putting a backup, putting some other systems in place. People should be able to take some time off, by the way. Greater transparency in those workflows. Again, if you have zero visibility because it jumps from system to system to system to system, then you might have to bring it down. So I always tell people it's not that one system is better than another. Just everyone has to agree how things work. We all use Slack for this. We all use Zoom for this. As opposed to everyone can jump from this to this willy-nilly, as they feel free, as they feel like it. So those shared process layers. So not into the nitty-gritty, but the critical pieces. So really understand what are the critical steps. There's some stuff, there's plenty of leeway that it's not going to create that huge of an issue. But understand, if it is or not critical, understanding that's where the audits come in. Practical, tactics, not just theoretical frameworks. And a lot of times managers create this theoretical, in theory, it should work this way, and that's great. But in real life, it doesn't. Better execution with less confusion, of course, is what they want, and a clearer line of sight of performance. If you don't know how long things take, you have a big issue. You should know that this is a 10-minute process, not a 3-day process. So if someone takes 3 days on a 10-minute process, you already know you have an issue. And the last thing I always tell people is assume that there's going to be process drift. You build something great. How do you know when it started, when that tight 10-minute task now became a 20-minute, a 30-minute? How do you know that more stuff got introduced, that one piece of software no longer works, and everybody had to do a workaround for that? So again, always learn. Talk about it constantly. You always want to ask when things go wrong. What did we learn? Not who messed it up. You always want to be understanding what's working and what's not working. And I say that to people all the time right now, because right now AI is doing some amazing things. It's speeding things up very quickly. I always tell people when it comes to automation and robotics, it speeds things up. It doesn't take away. You may not need a lot of the grunt work, but what that does is it pushes all that grunt work coming at you a lot faster. Do we have enough skilled people to handle all that? If you have somebody going out there and suddenly they figured out a way to make 1,000 sales versus 100 in a month, could you handle the extra 900? That's really what a lot of this stuff does. It speeds it up. Every issue that you have is just going to be compounded. If you have something that is very manual, that was designed that way because somebody had to create this workaround, could it handle, suddenly you get an influx of more work? And that's why I always tell people, if you had to do 10 times more right now, what would that do to your systems? Would you start to break down? Would people quit, go home crying? And are you going to be providing, margaritas at the end of 5 o'clock every day? So
some companies do that. That's a strategy.
Right.
Or that, what they do is they provide lunch. I know some that they provide lunch so that you don't leave for lunch.
Employees don't really get that. They're not being nice. They're making sure you work more.
That's exactly right.
So yeah, so these are kind of, and again, I worked with thousands of people, and I did kind of write a book to kind of share my stories, and it's really the stories that everybody else had. And this is kind of the stuff that I always tell people. This is what your employees want you to know, their frustrations. They know this. This isn't a secret to them. They may not tell you, and if they're not telling you, the biggest question I always ask is why? Why don't they feel comfortable telling you? And yeah, someone said people should not be storing their things on the desktop. I'll tell you a horrifying story on this one. Somebody, one of the tasks at diagnostics, they have to go to test vehicles, and in the old school way, they go out into dealerships and things and record all of the different diagnostic texts, all that stuff. That laptop that had 10, 15 years got stolen. It was not backed up. And it was all gone. And so I always tell people, what happens if coffee gets spilled on your computer and it gets destroyed? Or you happen to own a brand new toddler who decides to push off your computer off of something and it crashes. That's it's not just for malicious purposes, that someone is trying to steal things. But this is very common. People store a lot of stuff that is corporate. It's intellectual property, and they don't understand the ramifications if things get lost on purpose or unintentional, and what that does to the corporate knowledge. This is corporate knowledge. It should be stored and managed in a corporate way. My opinion.
So can I jump in with a couple comments, Maribel, and then get into our discussion? So one I'm going to say is I do think Robert Snyder's talk next month is really I think these are going to dovetail quite nicely, because I believe both of you are poking at some of the same types of challenges. I just want to make a couple comments. You said, if you know, you know, and that feels to me like similar to, hey, it's just common sense. We assume a lot of things are common sense, and gosh, I wish everyone had common sense, but what's common to me isn't common to the person across from me. So what I think they should know, sometimes they don't. Doesn't necessarily mean they're ignorant, right? It sometimes means that we're assuming that people have the same experiences that we do. That's a bad assumption. Also, in the chat here, I saw using Stream. So Chris Weir here has really driven me. Hi, Chris. Chris will hit record when we're having a discussion that we need to pass off to one of Chris's team members. He'll hit record and he'll use that as the explanation rather than trying to put together an email or create some separate training. And it's got me to now where I'll pull up Stream and I'll just stream the explanation. And sometimes that becomes a training video. Now, to your point, Maribel, it's not enough just to record a bunch of things. You have to catalog them. You have to organize them. Otherwise, they just go into the ether. But the tools are there, I think, to get much faster at how we document and communicate this information. So I love that. And then I thought I had a last one, but I can't remember what it was. Well, I liked your comment on process drift. The other piece here that resonates with me, and I would just press everybody, is my team, we spend a lot of time, and I did not know this when I first started my consulting firm, we spend a lot of time observing other people's processes. And you may go, gosh, that sounds nice. Well, no, it's kind of tedious, and it's necessary because we assume that other people, they've been trained so they know. And much of what we find and bring to the surface for our clients is the discrepancies between what we think is happening and what is actually happening. And the only way you do that is process observation. You have to do it, and it's tedious, but it's so crucial.
And sometimes process observation can now, especially in a company like call centers and stuff, they are recording both calls and what is happening on the screen. So you can actually see that, and you can see people bouncing 5 different tasks at the same time trying to get their job done. The other thing I wanted to mention that most people do not think about is training. If your company is experiencing high turnover, who is training the newbie? And the reason I say that is you end up having this telephone game situation over time. I don't have time to train this person, blah, blah, blah. So you leave one of the most critical tasks to the last person who got trained, ends up training. And then if they get something wrong, they're now teaching it wrong.
The telephone game.
It is the telephone game. And so oftentimes the things that you don't realize are critical into your company, and when I say training, it's not just how to do the task. It's where do things live? How do I get access to certain things? What data is available to me? Who do I talk to? Who is my main person? When I was at Snap-on, I'll tell you this, I became the de facto I know everything, right? And it wasn't that, but it became because I understood the full organization. If someone got stuck and didn't know either if they were new or experienced, hey, Maribel, could you tell me, where would I find out blah, blah, blah? I could probably tell them very quickly, oh, you need to speak to so-and-so or this information. We actually have all of this because I was always connected with the CTO, the president. I knew what we had. So I was a very fast place for me to then repoint everyone. Oh no, this is where you need to be. A lot of companies don't have that. So then they start going through, or God forbid, they don't even want to ask the question to somebody because they don't want to look stupid. And that's the other thing I always tell people. This is another area, another gotcha for most people. I always tell people, of course you should research. Of course you should learn. Of course you should try and do something yourself first. But if it's been 3 days and you're stuck on the hamster wheel and you're not moving forward, raise your hand, ask for help because somebody can help you and show you how it's done, push you forward, give you the data that you need or give you the information you need and get you moving. Sometimes processes stall for months. And the reason it stalled, it's because someone got promoted and they know how to do 80% of their job really well, but they're not proficient in a new piece of software that they're now having to learn. This isn't their thing. If your company is large enough, chances are there's plenty of others who could assist, but they're not going to assist if they don't know someone is struggling.
Yes.
So these are the things that you have to build into that culture, which is how long is it acceptable for you to sit there to struggle on your own in pain and crying at the end of the night, versus raising your hand. So you need to try enough that you put some effort, you're learning, but at the same time, you're not going to stall the entire project, company, and everything because you're trying to learn how to code on the fly at your job.
So let's try and get a little tactical here, and I want to jump to Jason Stoll. The question that we proposed, actually, two kind of questions. I snuck one in. Was, where do communication breakdowns typically happen in your day-to-day work? What data do you wish you had more visibility into making daily decisions? And Jason, you just broadly said in healthcare, communication breakdowns between physicians, nurses, patients, and ancillary teams. I think this is an interesting one for all of us. We're all impacted by healthcare, so I'm kind of interested to know more about those communication breakdowns. And then, Maribel, if you could give Jason some advising based on what he shares. Does that work?
All right. So, most information, critical information, you try to put in like in your EMR system, so that's some kind of an official document, like here's your source of truth. There's also, protocols for handoffs, like between doctors and doctors, nurses and nurses, for various things for patients as well. But it still always seems like some things can just like fall through the cracks, like some little tidbit of information didn't get relayed, like, all right, well, this person is waiting on a mech red from pharmacy before they can be discharged. Just little simple things like that. It's usually small little things like that, and maybe a small amount of times it's something significant or major, where it's where there's potential issues or patient harm. But most of the time it's like these small little niggling issues.
Do you have a way to capture all those little issues? Post-it notes or something that you can dump somewhere?
That are brought up, there's a system called SafeWatch that our company uses, and there's a whole separate team of patient safety and quality that reviews and goes through every single one of them.
How efficient is it at changing process, policy, or whatever based on what they're seeing?
I'm not too involved with that, but there's our leadership. Our CAPS leadership is involved in the big things, so clinical advancement and patient safety.
From your gut feel, is it getting better or worse?
I'd say better.
Okay, because if it's getting better, then the system is working right. I'm documenting all this stuff. Someone is reviewing it. Changes are happening. The stuff I'm complaining about is happening less. So one of the things that I always notice that people don't do is people don't track failures as often as they track successes. So you have your KPIs and all of that, but you don't track all these little incidents and whatever. And so what happens is, until it gets so bad, you have to sit down and fix it. You allow all these little things to continue to brew. And sometimes when you're documenting all these little things, you realize there's a common source. It's a person that does it always wrong or manages the system wrong. Sometimes, and I hate to say this, there's always an 80-20, and oftentimes you find out it's not a system-wide problem. It's a training issue with one person who gets it wrong every single time. And when you start to notice that and you start to pinpoint that, now you realize, oh, I only have to deal with one person, not the entire company or whatever. Most people don't track these things.
If I just jump in, that's the point, though. We don't track these things. I think, Jason, the fact that you have a system, great, but how well is that system utilized? It's one thing to check the box and kind of put a piece of information in. It's another thing to actually capture clearly and concisely. Like a book long tracking doesn't help either. It has to be concise. And then someone actually mines it for the kind of information that Maribel is bringing up. I think that's a great point. I agree. If it's getting better, it means that you guys are using the system the way it's intended. And maybe the only question is, kind of like we've been saying, is auditing it to make sure that it's truly optimized. Sorry, Maribel, I didn't mean to cut you off there, but I think it's a great point.
Yeah, so you really need to see, auditing is important because you want to make sure that anybody who's inputting things into the system, did they capture it correctly and did somebody understand it correctly? Did they put the issue in correctly? Did they describe it well? And did the person who read it understand what they were trying to say to figure out what needs to be done? Hospitals, and by the way, my professor at for the Six Sigma program works extensively with hospitals and doctors here in San Diego. And so most of his examples were horror stories for me. And I can tell you now that I'm more caregiving with my parents, I am 100 times more careful when I'm dealing with doctors and nurses and those handoffs to make sure I'm double checking behind them. And yes, there are a lot of mistakes for a lot of different reasons. Long hours at the end of shifts, different styles. My understanding is so my parents do Kaiser, so it's an HMO. Everyone is under the same policy at Kaiser. There's benefits and pros and cons for that. But most hospitals, if I don't know if it's still this way, doctors are not employees of the hospital. Nurses are required to follow hospital policies. Doctors are not. So one of his biggest challenges was that it was a volunteer way if the doctor wanted to follow the established standard for the hospital. They didn't have to.
Optionalism.
Depends. If a physician, if you ever heard the term like hospitalist, they are mostly employees of that healthcare system, and they'll fall under the auspices of the chief medical officer. Other specialties, maybe not. It depends what the setup is like, and that's where some of the challenge can take place.
And that's where it is. So you have people that have to follow policy and can be managed from a data standpoint and all of that. And then you have a small group, and that's why I said it's usually that 80-20, right? And you're probably going to find the biggest amount of chaos in that 5%. And I always tell people, you really want to understand 80-20? If you pull the battery out of your car, it is not a very expensive component of your car, but pull that thing out, you don't have a car. You're not going anywhere. It's going to be a huge issue. It's a very simple fix. Lots of chaos over $100 battery in your car if it dies or someone pulls it out. In my experience, most problems, by the way, when I looked at a lot of the projects that people were trying to fix, if I had to give the final root cause of why it went down, I could tell you that it was usually a miscommunication along the way. At some point, someone interpreted something wrong, didn't get the piece of information that they needed. There was just a communication mishap at some point that led to huge discrepancies on what I thought was going to happen.
Disruption.
But it was huge. And I can give you a ton of examples on those.
Let's get one more in here, and I want to jump over to Scott Winter because you had quite a bit about handoffs as the points of breakdown. And so could you explain to Maribel a little bit about the handoffs that you run into, and she could give you some advice on that?
I was just making all that up just to put something in. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, I've got a team, Maribel, you were talking about earlier, in interdepartmental handoffs is kind of that number one spot, and so I'm seeing that quite a bit in my work right now. been working with, we have a service team that's servicing our medical devices, but they don't do the billing for those to our customers. Our customer service team does the billing. And so they have this really awesome process to save a PDF file in a folder for the
Nice.
other team. And so they're just dragging and dropping files and stuff into folders. So that's their method of communicating. And, you know, obviously it would have worked really well 20 years ago.
Because now
you
the
know,
other
there's-
person has to open up a PDF and read through the data points.
Yeah, and copy and paste it into our ERP and then build a customer. Yeah, absolutely.
So with PDFs, here's my thing. Usually the PDF is being converted from something. What is the original source before it gets converted into a PDF?
It's created in a PDF, but
No, but
I
what's the
guess
source of the data?
our ERP system, a different system that records our complaints, compliance, regulatory compliance complaints, and then physical, the actual service event and the testing and the report out from that is all either manual or from another.
When you say manual, like somebody actually writes notes?
Yeah.
So here's a couple of things. Anything that is ERP and all that, you can connect it via some sort of query and dump the data so that they're not copying and pasting into something else, that they're using source data into something else. It's unfortunate if they're doing handwriting, if they're actually typing into something. You can apply some robotics. There's plenty of OCR things that can read the PDFs or anything else and convert that data into something else so that they're not having to open and retype and do all of that. Depending on how messy it is how effective it is. If it's being typed, it'll be effective. But I always look at source data first and then figure out how do you take out the middleman, which is the PDF, and go source to source, right? I need to take this piece of data and move it into this piece of data. And this is true for everything. Always try to figure out, where do you take out the middle person? You know, do I really need it? And that middle person, again, is in this case software. But how do you go source to source and eliminate the double data, or the anytime you have somebody retyping something, you have a huge issue. Huge issue. So you need to figure out source to source, and it's going to speed everything up. The accuracy is going to get there as well. So yeah.
It pays for itself at that point. And maybe what you have to do is cost justify the errors so that you can get the IT time to actually go and put together the integration that you need. Because I'm sure there's some long list of IT projects that this would fall under, but we under invest, I believe, in many of those IT projects because we struggle to quantify the impact of not having them. You know?
So Microsoft has robotics already embedded that can do this. And so you can combine your Microsoft, it's not PowerShell. It's
Power Automate,
Power Automate. I get them confused. Power Automate and Power Up. I get those mixed up. One is more robust than the other. But you can combine it with an Adobe license. Then with the Adobe license that it has that OCR that can read it. And that's only if it's absolutely necessary. If there's no other way of getting around it because it's too physical and somebody still has to do things, that's one thing. But I would first look to see if you can go source to source and eliminate the PDF. If the PDF is coming from an external source, it's not coming internally, then you want to OCR it at that point. And have that data be dumped into something else, back into the ERP, back into whatever system somebody is typing it into. I had somebody build using, I think it was UiPath, might have been something different. Automation Anywhere. Take Excel spreadsheets and then go into the ERP system and type in all of the inventory pieces from the repair area, and just can key them, literally can key them in the robotics in there. And that bot did not take more than 5 or 6 hours to build, because it was very simple and very repetitive. And the nice thing about it is, and we had to do it that way because IT locked down the ERP system because it's being used globally, and they wouldn't open up that system because they thought it was too risky. So we had to do it physically, data entry in. Well, that's great, but now I'm having a bot do it versus a human do it. That way, it's going through the front door, doing it that way, but the bot isn't going to make the mistakes. They're not going to do the typos. They're going to do a straight copy and paste.
How, this is a general question, or Maribel, if you want to speak to it too. How do you guys track and manage the processes that we've been talking about today, the handoffs, the full process, and especially when you start to integrate some of the IT functionality? Like, people need to understand how that works, or I believe they do need to understand how that works and what it's doing in case something in the future changes for that. So what does that look like in terms of just storing all of that information and accessing it in the future, and using it for training and all that kind of stuff?
So I know for Mitchell, they were moving into ServiceNow in order to be able to keep the documentation in with the ticketing and all of that combined. So it depends on, so I always say start with what you have in the systems that you already own, and see if you can augment them. So I personally, when I was process mapping, and I know it's not very common to use, I tried using Lucidchart and all of that, and I wasn't crazy about it. There's a free program called Archie that is written by the Open Group, that builds the foundation for Lucidchart, that the Archimate model. The reason I like it is because as you're mapping, you can put links in to where the documentation lives. So now you have one process map with links to all of the data into it, or videos, or whatever it is that you have, so that you have the high level executive summary process map. And as you start to go down deeper, it has kind of an Excel spreadsheet element to every single square line or whatever, that you could put a link into where the documentation lives in your organization, and then it keeps it all organized. If you need to that level, but a lot of stuff you can do it within a lot of the software that you're probably already using. That includes sometimes the ERP systems. So here's the thing. One of my facilities could upload documents into the ERP system. So like you're saying, the billing and all of that stuff, they would upload all that into the ERP system so that whoever was pulling it could pull it all down from there. It was all contained in the customer record. That feature was shut off to everyone else because they didn't want it, but it existed. And no one really noticed that their software had a grayed out paper clip. And so when I pointed it out, they're like, why is it grayed out? I'm like, because it's not turned on for you. And then came all the requests to IT, turn it on. I can't believe I'm keeping all this. So other facilities were spending money on software for document control, all because somebody didn't turn on the feature that allowed them to put everything into the ERP system. So it's amazing to me, this stuff, especially if you're a global company, that people don't share. And oftentimes, this is why I say audit your software, because a lot of people don't even realize there's a ton of features that would take care of all of this stuff for you. Engineers have put a ton of stuff into things, but you never bother to look at, Excel can do more than keep, things in nice columns and rows.
That's so we're a little bit over, so I'm gonna just respecting everyone's time. I'm gonna close us out here, but I do want to just, that point you just made, Maribel, I hear very often is that people don't fully utilize the software that they purchased, And frankly, the competing component is there's people out there selling software that much prefer you buy something new than you realize that you're not using something that you already have in your software that it already sits there. So I think that's another really crucial point. I also, one of the things, Maribel, I'm going to take away is just the reality that while we can train and document to improve these handoffs, ultimately, and in the age we're living in, we should be looking for automated solutions to pass information along, because as long as there's a human in the mix, it's going to have some interpretation. But I'm gonna close this out there. Maribel, thank you so much. I feel like this is a great conversation. I really like what you brought to the table here. I also believe it sets us up well, actually, for next month's conversation. So I hope that you, in particular, Maribel, can attend. But I hope everyone else will be able to attend as well. Have a great month. Have a great 4th of July, and we'll see you next time.
All right. Thanks
everyone.
again.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.